Secret donors, that is what Sheldon Whitehouse discovered funding. Kash Patel's rise to FBI director, a shadow network of billionaire extremists who bought themselves a federal law enforcement agency. What started as routine questioning about FBI independence became a devastating exposure of how dark money had captured America's premier investigative institution. When Whitehouse methodically revealed the financial web connecting Patel to radical donors, foreign operatives, and domestic terrorists, America witnessed the exact moment federal law enforcement was exposed as a purchased commodity. But the final donor on Whitehouse's chart would shock even the most cynical observers of Washington corruption. At exactly 10:15 a.m. in the Senate Judiciary Committee's mahogany, paneled chamber, Sheldon Whitehouse walked in carrying his signature weapon against corruption, a poster-sized chart that would systematically destroy Kash Patel's credibility forever. The Rhode Island Democrat, former prosecutor and Congress's most feared dark money investigator, had spent months following financial trails that led from shadowy nonprofits to the highest levels of federal law enforcement. Behind Whitehouse, two staffers wheeled in an easel supporting what would become the most viral congressional visual aid in modern history. The chart, titled "The Patel Network: How Dark Money Bought the FBI," contained names, dollar amounts, and connection lines that painted a picture of institutional capture so complete it defied imagination. Across the witness table sat Kash Patel, Trump's hand-picked FBI director, whose entire confirmation process had been mysteriously expedited, despite obvious red flags. Patel's dark suit was perfectly pressed, his American flag pin-positioned precisely, but behind his confident facade lurked the unmistakable tension of someone who knew his financial secrets were about to be exposed on national television. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Whitehouse had obtained financial records through congressional subpoena power that revealed how a network of extremist donors had systematically funded Patel's career from obscure House staffer to FBI director. What those records showed would shake the foundations of American law enforcement. C-SPAN cameras captured every detail as Whitehouse unveiled his chart with theatrical precision. The visual was devastating, a web of dark money flowing from radical organizations, foreign-linked entities, and domestic extremist groups directly into funds supporting Patel's political rise. "Director Patel," Whitehouse began, his voice carrying the controlled intensity of someone about to systematically dismantle his target. "I want to discuss the financial network that funded your rise to federal law enforcement leadership." Patel shifted uncomfortably, recognizing the opening move in what he knew would be a political execution. "Senator, I've complied with all financial disclosure requirements during my confirmation process." But Whitehouse wasn't interested in official disclosures that had clearly been designed to hide rather than reveal. He pointed to the first section of his chart showing a complex web of nonprofit organizations. "This is the Constitutional Defense Alliance, a 501c4 organization that spent $2.3 million supporting your nomination. Can you tell us who funds this organization?" The question landed like a physical blow. The Constitutional Defense Alliance was one of dozens of shadowy groups that had emerged to support Trump loyalists in key positions. "I am not familiar with the internal funding sources of organizations that may have supported my confirmation." Patel deflected, but his voice lacked conviction. "You are not familiar with who spent $2.3 million supporting your nomination?" Whitehouse's incredulity was palpable. "That seems like something an FBI director would want to know, given your responsibility for investigating foreign influence and corruption." Whitehouse moved to the next section of his chart, revealing connections that would dominate headlines for weeks. The Constitutional Defense Alliance receives significant funding from the Liberty Foundation, which itself is funded by a network of shell companies traced to these individuals. He pointed to names that sent shockwaves through the chamber. Robert Mercer, $500,000. Rebecca Mercer, $750,000. Charles Koch, network entities, $1.2 million. Peter Thiel, $400,000. And most concerning, entities connected to foreign nationals, including Russian oligarch Viktor Vekselberg, $300,000. Each name hit like a hammer blow. America's FBI director had been funded by a network of extremist billionaires and foreign operatives. "Senator, I had no knowledge of or control over independent expenditures by outside organizations," Patel insisted, but the pattern was too obvious to dismiss. Whitehouse then revealed the most damaging connection yet. This brings us to the American Security Institute, which provided $1.8 million in consulting fees to firms connected to your confirmation effort. The AC's largest donor is Viktor Orbán's government in Hungary, channeled through American intermediaries. The revelation was devastating. A foreign authoritarian government had helped fund the confirmation of America's FBI director. Director Patel, were you aware that your nomination was supported by funds from Viktor Orbán's Hungarian government? I was not involved in fundraising activities and had no knowledge of donor sources. Patel deflected. But sweat was now visible on his forehead. You had no knowledge that a foreign government was spending money to put you in charge of American federal law enforcement? Whitehouse pressed. That doesn't concern you from a counterintelligence perspective. The question exposed the fundamental contradiction. Either Patel was dangerously ignorant of foreign influence operations targeting his own confirmation, or he was lying about his knowledge. But Whitehouse was just getting started on his systematic demolition. He pointed to another section of his chart showing direct financial connections. Let's discuss your personal financial relationships with these same networks. According to financial disclosures obtained through congressional investigation, you received $47,000 in speaking fees from organizations connected to these same dark money donors. The direct financial connection was undeniable. Patel hadn't just been supported by extremist donors, he had been personally paid by them. Those were legitimate speaking engagements on matters of national security, Patel claimed, but his voice was getting weaker. Speaking engagements arranged by whom, and who determined the unusually high fees for someone who was at the time a relatively junior congressional staffer? Whitehouse had documented that Patel's speaking fees were far above market rates for someone of his position, suggesting the payments were less about speaking and more about building financial relationships. Then Whitehouse revealed the connection that would destroy any remaining credibility. He pointed to the center of his chart where all the money trails converged. This brings us to the Patriot Alliance Fund, a super PAC that coordinated many of these expenditures. According to Federal Election Commission records, you personally attended a private donor meeting for this organization in March 2024. 8 months before your FBI nomination. The timeline was devastating. Patel had been personally meeting with the dark money donors who would later fund his confirmation. I attend many events in my professional capacity, Patel weakly defended. Professional capacity? As what? You were House Intelligence Committee staff. Why were you attending private meetings with billionaire extremists and foreign-linked entities? Whitehouse had caught Patel in a web of his own making. Either these were inappropriate meetings that should have disqualified him from FBI leadership, or they were appropriate meetings that he should have disclosed during confirmation. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. Whitehouse pointed to a section of his chart labeled Active Coordination that showed ongoing financial relationships. Director Patel, even more concerning is evidence of ongoing coordination. The Liberty Foundation has continued making payments to entities connected to you after your confirmation. In April 2025, they paid $25,000 to a consulting firm that employs your former chief of staff. In June, another $30,000 to a legal defense fund for your benefit. The ongoing payments revealed that this wasn't just historical support. It was active financial coordination while Patel served as FBI director. I have no control over independent expenditures by outside organizations, Patel repeated, but the excuse was wearing thin. Independent expenditures, your former chief of staff, is being paid by the same network that funded your confirmation while you make decisions about FBI investigations. How is that independent? The corruption was undeniable. The same dark money network that had bought Patel his position was continuing to financially support his inner circle. Whitehouse then revealed the most shocking connection on his entire chart. At the bottom, he had reserved space for what he called the ultimate corruption. He pointed to a line connecting the Patriot Alliance Fund to a name that sent gasps through the chamber. According to banking records obtained through congressional subpoena, the Patriot Alliance Fund has received $2.7 million from entities controlled by Steve Bannon, including payments made while he was under federal investigation by your agency. The chamber erupted. America's FBI director had been funded by someone his own agency was investigating. Director Patel, were you aware that Steve Bannon helped fund your confirmation while under FBI investigation? For 43 seconds, Kash Patel sat in complete silence. The cameras captured every moment of his internal collapse as he realized there was no way to explain away this level of corruption. His hands gripped the witness table. His face had lost all color. The weight of documented financial corruption seemed to crush him entirely. Finally, Patel attempted the impossible. Senator, I was not aware of specific donor identities during my confirmation process. You weren't aware that a subject of FBI investigation was funding your confirmation. Whitehouse's voice rose with genuine outrage. Either you are lying about your knowledge or you are admitting to gross incompetence in vetting your own financial supporters. The choice was impossible: admit to corruption or admit to incompetence so severe it disqualified him from office. But Whitehouse saved his most devastating evidence for last. Director Patel, this final section of my chart shows the most disturbing connection of all. He pointed to what he had labeled the insurrection connection. According to financial records, the same dark money network funding your confirmation also provided $1.4 million in legal defense funds for the 6th of January defendants, including payments to lawyers representing individuals charged with seditious conspiracy. The connection was explosive. The money funding America's FBI director was also funding the legal defense of people charged with trying to overthrow the government. Your financial supporters are simultaneously funding your position and defending people charged with seditious conspiracy. Do you see any conflict of interest in this arrangement? Patel had no answer because there was no constitutional answer. He had been funded by a network that was actively supporting people charged with attacking American democracy. Senator, I had no knowledge of or control over how independent organizations allocated their expenditures. Patel repeated weakly. No knowledge that your supporters were funding seditious conspiracy defenses. No knowledge that foreign governments were paying for your confirmation. No knowledge that subjects of FBI investigation were financing your career. Whitehouse had systematically destroyed any pretense that Patel's confirmation was legitimate. Through documented financial records, he had proven that America's FBI director had been purchased by a network of extremist billionaires, foreign operatives, and domestic insurrectionists. Director Patel, based on this documented evidence of dark money corruption, foreign influence, and ongoing financial coordination with extremist networks. How can the American people trust that the FBI serves justice rather than the financial interests of your secret donors? The question hung in the air like smoke. When Patel finally responded, his voice was barely audible. I serve the American people according to my oath of office. Your oath of office, or your financial obligations to the extremist billionaires who bought your position. Social media exploded within minutes. Number dark money be trended worldwide as clips of Whitehouse's chart presentation went viral, reaching 3.2 million views in the first hour. Number Patel secretaries became a rallying cry demanding his immediate resignation. Financial transparency advocates called it the most comprehensive exposure of dark money corruption in federal law enforcement history. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington immediately filed ethics complaints based on Whitehouse's evidence. Former FBI officials expressed alarm about foreign financial influence over their former agency. When an FBI director is funded by foreign governments and extremist networks, national security itself is compromised, declared former Deputy Director Andrew McCabe. CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin observed, Whitehouse didn't just expose corruption, he mapped the entire financial ecosystem that purchased control of American law enforcement. Constitutional law experts called for immediate investigations into what they termed the systematic financial capture of federal institutions. Georgetown Law's Neil Katyal declared it evidence of constitutional crisis, requiring immediate congressional action. Within 48 hours, 7 Democratic senators called for Patel's resignation based on the dark money evidence. House Democrats announced plans for comprehensive hearings on foreign financial influence in federal law enforcement. International allies questioned whether they could trust intelligence sharing with an FBI director funded by foreign governments and extremist networks. European intelligence officials privately expressed alarm about sharing sensitive information with what one called a financially compromised American institution. The Justice Department Inspector General announced an emergency investigation into Patel's financial relationships and potential conflicts of interest. Ethics watchdog groups filed formal complaints based on Whitehouse's documented evidence of ongoing financial coordination. Sheldon Whitehouse had accomplished something unprecedented, using visual evidence to expose how dark money had systematically purchased control of America's premier law enforcement agency. His chart didn't just show financial connections, it mapped the complete capture of federal institutions by extremist billionaires and foreign operatives. The message was clear: when federal agencies serve financial donors over constitutional duty, democracy becomes a commodity for sale to the highest bidder. Whitehouse's chart proved it was happening. The ongoing payments confirmed it, and the American people saw both mapped out in devastating detail on national television.